Thank you, Stu. My name is Phil Jordan. I'm the head of contact channel automation and self-service for Homeserve in the UK. My responsibilities are for identifying and looking for customer-facing automation and self-service opportunities across any channel, digital, SMS. But over the last 2 years, we've been working with Sabio on a natural language processing voice bot to see if we could actually replace some of our agent-facing conversations in an entirely robotic way. I'll share with you a bit about who Homeserve are, the challenges we're facing, and the evolution of the technology that got us to the point we're at now. So, who are Homeserve? Homeserve are one of the UK's leading home assistance providers. We're not just based in the UK, we're based in Spain, France, the USA, and Japan as well. And our job is to sell insurance and one-off repairs for a lot of the home problems that you guys will receive. So things like plumbing, drainage, gas, electrical, pest and security issues in and around the home. We own our own contact centers and we have our own fleet of engineers. So for plumbing, drainage and gas, we are responsible for that end-to-end journey, all the way through from a customer calling us to tell us they have a problem, all the way through to repairing it and leaving that customer in a satisfied state. I think it's fair to say that your home is one of your most important assets. So making sure that we can offer an efficient and reliable service is absolutely essential to making sure that customers feel satisfied with the products that they've bought. So just to tell you a bit about some of the challenges we were seeing, and I don't think any of these challenges are unique to Homeserve. I think that they're fairly common. About everyone that works in a contact center environment will be able to recognize these challenges. What we saw was around 90 to 95% of the contacts with our customers were happening over the phone. And this is despite having a relatively mature digital channel. We really struggled with digital adoption. We can try our best to force customers towards a digital channel, but actually our products themselves don't really lend themselves to that kind of interaction. You probably use the product maybe once, twice, or even 3 times a year at most. With that, when you have a problem in your home, the first port of call is normally to pick up the phone and call someone to get that fixed. Additionally, around 33% of our total call volume was related to customers telling us that they had a problem in the home. Now, this was very prone to external factors, things like major weather events or seasonality, but additionally, even time of day. We get peaks and troughs throughout the day where customers call us based on the behavior. We get big peaks in the morning or big peaks in the afternoon, which meant that we had a bit of a fluctuating service level within our contact centers. We wanted to look at opportunities to see how we could help our agents and help our customers to sort of flatten out those service levels, which led to us looking at what technologies we could use within the contact center to try and make things a bit more efficient. So this has been a long evolution. We didn't just start automating phone calls from the off. It started back in 2016 with Sabio again, where we developed an application called Homeserve. And essentially, that is our ID&V process that we have, which means when customers call up, they can provide us with some policy information or sort of postcode and so on, and we can identify who that customer is before they reach the agent. With that, we can pop that information onto the screen, and the agent can then start that conversation in a much warmer way. Instead of having to go through those data protection checks, we can partially automate that phone call and take that part of the journey away. And we actually saved around 20 to 30 seconds of AHT just by implementing that change. Now we knew who the customer was, we started asking ourselves, could we make our routing journeys a bit easier? So could we use those data points that we know about our customers to offer them different questions based on the scenario that they're in? So if we can identify that they're in their renewal cycle or they have an existing claim, we can ask them a question specific to that. We can say, I can see you have an existing claim, would you like to talk about this? That personalized journey meant that the customer was being delivered to the correct agent first time more often. So around 25% reduction in transfers within our contact center as a result of that. We really challenged ourselves at this point. Now we knew who the customer was, and we had a better idea of why they were calling. We started asking ourselves the question, could we collect any more information to get ourselves all the way through that journey and fully automate those interactions with our customers? We started on a really isolated product, so we only looked at our plumbing products to begin with. What we did was we started asking, using a directed dialogue technology powered by Nuance. We started asking specific questions to diagnose problems in a customer home. So things like, is it a plumbing or a drainage problem? It's a plumbing issue. Is it a leak or a blockage? It's a leak. We ended up going through this process of almost leading the customer to a diagnosis, a full diagnosis of the problem, in order to identify down to a trade level what engineer was required to fix the problem, and also be able to make a decision about whether that customer was covered. But we immediately saw the limitations in this technology. It wasn't giving us the breadth of information we needed to make a decision about all of our trades. We were very isolated to one trade. And it was taking around 15 to 20 questions to get a customer all the way through that process, which isn't particularly effortless. So at that point, we started looking at what we could do next, what technology was out there to help us with that real range of problems that customers may be experiencing. And we started looking at natural language processing, powered by Google Dialogflow. So I'm a scientist by trade. My background is chemistry. So I tend to start all of my programs with a hypothesis. We've got to decide, what are we trying to achieve as a business when we get into these things? And I made sure that we stayed really focused on the reason why we chose this technology in the first place, which was we selected a hypothesis of using conversational AI, we'll be able to determine to a deep level what problem the customer is experiencing and the resolution required. If we can use natural language processing to understand those really granular problems that a customer might be experiencing, we have all the information we need then to check their coverage and start the process of trying to fully automate those calls. When you enter these hypotheses, there's almost a small appreciation that the agents in your contact center, they're there to collect data on behalf of the customer and fill out forms. This is what we try and use natural language processing for. We're there to collect data in the same way that an agent would. If there's anything like complexity or emotion, we make sure that we pass that off to the human being, because that's what they're good at handling. But for simple transactions where all we need to do is collect data points and load it into our systems in order to fulfill a transaction, that's what we were attempting to use this technology for. So how do we begin? I think this is probably the biggest question I get asked when we demo this technology. Whenever I speak to people around this and the success that Homeserve's had with this technology, it's always a bit daunting when you get in there. You've selected your technology, you've selected your partner. How do you start actually understanding what customers want to talk about? And how do you start working your way towards that hypothesis? How do we understanding what customers, what problems they're experiencing? So within Homeserve, we caught up with Sabio, and we started a proof of concept, a 6-week proof of concept, where all we did was we overlaid the technology over one of our initial IVRs. So a standard, press 1 for this, 2 for that. We put utterance capture over the top, where we just asked an open question, which was, thank you for calling Homeserve. In a few words, please say how we can help you today. And what we got was we were inundated with data, with ways that customers like to refer to the transactions that they want to complete within our contact centers. It was our job to use this information to start to categorize it into, actually, here's our claims calls, here's our existing claims calls, here's our customer service and our sales interactions, and start to bucket those up into specific pots of customer. Additionally, our operations team had access to the Dialogflow model. They immediately learned how to train themselves on this technology. It was really easy to use. So they actually started creating these buckets within a week of us kicking off this initial proof of concept. And within a week, we had switched off the initial IVR, and we were routing customers directly from natural language to parts of the contact center. So how do we build it? We knew what we were trying to achieve. We now had the technology up and running. It was working on our telephony lines, and we were starting to capture what the customer wanted to talk about. We had to listen really, really carefully to the way the customer was describing the problems, because if we had traditionally gone down the way that Homeserve likes to talk about their trades, we talk about drainage engineers and plumbers and electricians and so on. But actually, if we'd started to build a model in that way, we'd have immediately been set up to fail. Because what we found was we had customers coming through and describing problems to us rather than trades. They weren't saying, I want to make a claim, I want to book a plumber. They were saying, I have a blockage, I have a blocked kitchen sink, my boiler's not working, it's leaking, those kind of problems. So we had to make sure that we built the model in the right way. We had what the customer was saying, and we had the endpoint we were trying to achieve, which is a code. That code links to a specific problem type, and that's what tells us what engineer is required and whether the customer is covered. So here's an example I've got on the wall behind me. It says a customer can come through and say, I have a blockage. At that point, we don't have enough information to assign that code to the endpoint. So we have to ask a follow-up question, which is, okay, please tell me what is blocked. And at this point, they can say a sink, a bath, a shower, but in this case, it's a toilet. Even at this point, we don't have enough information, so we have to ask some additional information, because the difference between an upstairs toilet, it's a plumber, and a downstairs toilet is a drainage engineer. So we need to make sure our system is capable of consuming that information. So we have to ask that question, and if it's an upstairs toilet, then we can roll a plumber. We can do the job of starting to check the customer's coverage and start to assign that engineer to the problem. Additionally with this is, by following the way the customer describes the problem, it meant that we were really autonomous in making sure that we could get the customer to that endpoint as quick as possible. We didn't want to ask loads and loads of laborious questions. We wanted to get to a point where, if within one question we can get the customer to that endpoint, or within 3 questions we can get the customer to that endpoint. We wanted to make sure that it was quick as possible for them. And I think that sort of process that we've been through with the team, both Sabio and Homeserve developers, working in collaboration against that specific hypothesis of what we were trying to achieve, has led us to something that's really successful and we're all very, very proud of. But instead of me telling you about that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play for you a genuine customer interaction with Hannah, who's Homeserve's automated natural assistant.
We can get you to the right place. In a couple of words, please say how we can help you today.
Toilet cistern needs repairing.
Thank you. Please bear with us whilst we check your policy details. This may take a few seconds. Great, I have found your details. I just need to make sure we have the most up-to-date address details for your policy. The postcode we have for you is CV22. Is this correct?
Yes.
Now let's get an engineer booked. The earliest we can be with you is today before 1 p.m. Shall I book that in for you?
Yes, please.
Thanks. Can the engineer contact you on the number you are calling from today?
Yes.
Okay, please wait while I book that in for you. While I do so, in a few words tell us about your experience of booking an appointment with us today.
I would say it's first class. Better than I expected, to be quite honest. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your feedback. The appointment for your toilet flush is booked today before 1 p.m. The engineer may arrive at any time during the time slot, and they will call you when they are on the way to your property. Please can you ensure that there is adequate parking and provide any permits if this is required. Thank you for calling Homeserve. Would you like to discuss anything else with us today?
No, that is fine. Thank you very much, Sugar. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
So that's the process. Within 2 minutes, we've managed to completely automate an end-to-end claims journey on behalf of that customer. And actually, that journey, if it had landed with an agent, would have taken around 7 to 9 minutes to complete due to the wait times that are trying to get through and so on. But what we had then was a really simple problem. The customer had a toilet flush issue. So off the first utterance, we were able to capture that problem and assign that code to it. Now, there's a lot that goes on in the background at that point. We identified the customer's record based on the phone number that they provided us. And with that, we can start to check the coverage and check for engineer availability while that customer is confirming that the postcode they had was theirs. That was the bleeps you heard. Hannah wasn't swearing at the customer at that point in time. We put the bleep in there so we could play the customer information to you. So that's all happening with APIs in the background of the call. We then go through to the next phase of the process, which is confirming the date. Now, this is where it's probably the most complicated part of the journey. And we started this process about 2 years ago with an open question where we'd say, tell us, when would you like the engineer to come? That data was essential for us building that next phase of it, which was offering that earliest appointment slot. Because what we found was 80 to 90% of the customers were replying with one of 3 responses, which was today, tomorrow, or as soon as possible. So we asked ourselves the question, well, why don't we just offer the earliest date then? And we see around 80% of customers just accepting that date when it is a same day or next day appointment. Again, we try and make it as passive as possible. We can see the phone number that the customer's calling in on, so we ask them if they'd like to use that on the day of the appointment, and the customer says yes. And then we go into a point of asking for some feedback, where we got some really good feedback off this customer. But I'll be honest with you guys today, there's a very deliberate reason why we have that feedback question. I always say to people that starting this automation journey, turning it on in the first instance is the first problem, really, as it gets into it. You're then met with 1,000 new problems that you need to go after. And this survey in question was put in there deliberately. We had a latency issue within our systems. Actually, our systems couldn't keep up with the speed that interaction was taking place. We collected all this information up. We then went to load it back into the system, and before it was getting back to Google Dialogflow, it was timing out, and we were finding out that we were kicking customers to agents, even though that claim had actually been booked in that space of time. It was actually one of the ideas of one of the Sabio developers called Vitaly, who works with us. He lives in the Ukraine. He came up with the idea of why don't we just ask them for some feedback to A, get some really good feedback from our customers to understand what they think of the journey, but also allow us some time to make sure that the systems can keep up with it. But really, I mean, in a nutshell, that's the kind of processes we're targeting, those simple transactional processes to get the customer from the start to the end. But I suppose that's good telling you all this, but what are the results for Homeserve? What does it mean for us? How important is this to us? So since we've gone live with this, we've had a bit of an iteration upwards, but we're now seeing 20% of our new claims volume being entirely handled by HANA. So that's 1 in 5 of our new claims is being fully automated. Additionally, 1 in 4, so 25% of our new boiler service bookings is being handled in an automated way. And about 7% of our in-flight claims calls, where customers call to chase engineers or cancel or amend that appointment, are also being handled, which means that actually 13% of Homeserve's call volume, claims-related call volume, is being entirely automated, which is a great result. We've managed to gain some additional benefit from this application as well. So because we've got the PopServe application still in place and we can tell the customer, tell the agent which customer is calling, we've started passing through the context that we're capturing. So if it does land with an agent and we've found out that the customer has a blocked kitchen sink, we can pass that information forward so the agent can start the conversation differently. Instead of asking the customer what's wrong, they can say, "Good afternoon, Mr. Jordan, I understand you have a blocked kitchen sink." And we've seen an additional 20 to 30 seconds of AHT just by adding a tactical whisper into the agent front end. In total, this application is now consuming around £1.5 million worth of contact center workload within Homeserve, so a significant operational machine this is now working on behalf. But that's what the benefit is for Homeserve. So what's the benefit for the customer? For every claim that we raise and for every boiler service booking that we complete, we send a survey out via Ransom Rave where we ask them to score out of between 0 and 9 what they thought of that process, but also leave some verbatim feedback. I think when we entered the automation journey with Homeserve, one of the biggest questions I was asked is actually, will customers want to use this? Will they be happy having a conversation around claims with a robot? And I think the feedback that we've received speaks for itself. These are genuine customer feedback that we've got from Ransom Rave, and I'll read a couple out to you. The first one is, I gave you the highest scores as the automated service was second to none. Another one is incredibly efficient, easy to arrange, and perhaps even easier than a human one-to-one contact. But I think my personal favorite is the one in the bottom left-hand corner there, which is probably the easiest and least annoying automated booking service I've used. I like the way the customer described that, because I think there is an expectation. The second a customer starts speaking to a robot, there's an expectation that it's going to misunderstand them. It's going to go wrong at some point during that journey. What we found, though, is actually that the easier we make it, the better the process gets. And we start to get to a point now where if we can identify exactly where customers are dropping at, where we're seeing system issues or mistranscriptions, and just continuously improve, we get to a point where actually these processes work for everyone in whatever channel they want to consume it in. Because I think, as we start to think about creating customer-facing processes, to not be annoying should be the minimum expectation of us. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.